All right, what do you say we get started?
Okay, I think that's my cue.
Yeah, let's see.
All right, well, good morning, everyone. This is Sonia Pryor Jones with the FAB Foundation, and we are delighted to invite you to another webinar. Right now, we are in the midst of COVID-19 and can't stop talking about that, but we thought it was really important that we remembered that this was Women's History Month and that we took an opportunity to gather and to celebrate the work that women are doing, particularly the women of our Fab Lab network, and really excited to introduce our guests to you today and to have them share their stories. And so I'd like to just first thank our guests for joining us and their willingness to share how they too are democratizing digital fabrication every day. And then I also want to thank our SCOPES team for putting this all together, and wanted to specifically welcome officially two of our newest team members, Liz Whitewolf, who is going to be facilitating this session today and serving as our our engagement and program manager. And then we also have with us Lydia Ford, who has also joined the team and is serving as executive assistant to all of us here on the education group. So we're super delighted to have you. I always like to start by reminding people the goals of the FAB Foundation and the goals of the SCOPES project. One, we want to democratize digital fabrication. We want to put these tools and capabilities in the hands of as many people around the world as we possibly can. And through the SCOPES project, we want to do that through primary and secondary education, or what we like to call K-12, making sure that all of the learning environments, whether those that are in classrooms or in out of school time programming, have the opportunity for kids everywhere to learn digital fabrication. And we do that not only with the FAB Foundation staff, but also with our network. And so you're going to get to hear from some amazing women in our network who are making this happen in the work that they do every day. So I'm going to turn things over to Liz, and thank you all for being here.
Great. Thanks, Sonia. So I'm going to share my screen and talk a little bit about what we're doing here. So I'm Liz Whitewolf. I'm the new engagement and program coordinator for SCOPES, and I'm really excited to be here. This is my first webinar that I'm hosting for SCOPES. I appreciate everyone being here, kind of taking a different perspective on this Tuesday morning. Here are our team members for our SCOPES team, and most of them are here on the call, whether or not they are presenters or attendees. I appreciate everyone being here. This is us. And let me tell you a little bit about some of the resources that SCOPES has on site. So far, we have over 1,000 community members. You'll be hearing from 4 of them today. Those community members are all over the map, from fabbers to teachers to makers to informal educators, administrators, anybody who's interested in the democratization of digital fabrication tools, especially in the K-12 spaces, are members of our community. On our website, we have over 180 standards aligned digital fabrication lessons. These are community contributed, so they come from all of our different community members. Some of them come from our staff, but most of them come from you guys. A couple other resources we have is a playbook that was a reflection on the work that SCOPES did in embedded teacher professional development and digital fabrication into 2 different schools across the US in 2018. It's called our playbook, A Theory and Practice of Digital Fabrication in the Classroom. That you can look at or download for free on the site. And the other thing is we've spent a lot of time developing some learning progression standards, if you were, for Fab Labs or digital fabrication. We call them Fab I Can statements, and we're very interested in seeing how our community is using these tools in their classrooms or their programs. They're a very unique set of learning outcomes that are apparent in our work, and we're always looking to hear from the community about how people are using those. If you would like to get if you would like to print your own copy of the Fab I Can statements, it is available. They are available to download on our website as well. So without any further ado, we're going to get started with our amazing panelists today. And I really thank you guys for being here, talking about your work, how you got here. And at the end of our short presentations from our panelists, we'll be taking questions from attendees. So feel free to use the chat window to type in your question, and we'll get to them towards the end. So to start off with, we are going to hear from Ellie Bueller, who's a Fab Lab manager at NOLA, which is stands for New Orleans, Louisiana. I just found out today. Ellie, you want to get started?
Yeah, thank you, Liz. Thank you for the introduction. Let's get going. Hi, everyone. My name's Ellie Bueller. I'm the manager of the Fab Lab in New Orleans at Delgado Community College. And a little bit about me. I graduated from MIT in 2011 as an electrical engineer, course 6 for anyone who's been there. I was on the MIT sailing team. I got into that by joining the robotics sailing team and then joined the real sailing team. After I graduated, I worked at Microsoft for a couple of years as a hardware design engineer. I worked on the South Bridge of the Xbox One. I've enjoyed that, but figured out that my passion was really for teaching. So I started mentoring robotics teams. I started mentoring the robotics team I started in high school. In fact, a first robotics team that is at this point really competitive nationally, and they won the world championship that year. I also started designing little robotic mini games for the spring. So the bottom left-hand corner is a little game that we put together with Arduinos and tennis balls. Then I moved to Berkeley, where I worked with the school to develop the robotics engineering pathway, got a teaching certificate in California, teaching license, and taught intro to robotics engineering and helped them start a first robotics team. I moved to New Orleans because of my husband's job and got really, really lucky, found the Fab Lab and got this position. After I'd been working as an instructor for the Electric Girls, which is a group that teaches kids, well, girls from ages 5 to 14 how to solder and use power tools. And at this point, I've been the manager at Fab Lab NOLA for a little over a year. So what we do is we serve 3 different communities, and the one I primarily work with is K-12 students and the Delgado Community College students. So for K-12 students, we have field trips where schools will come in for 1 to 4 visits. We have Junior Achievement, a partnership with Junior Achievement, where we go to their BizTown events. We teach 6 kids out of usually the 100 that come to the events how to use a laser cutter, and they learn how to customize keychains for their friends. We were supposed to be doing 23 of those events this spring. There's a number of STEM festivals we participate throughout the year in. There's the French Quarter Fest, that's our biggest one in the spring. There's several other STEM festivals that have thousands of students come through. And then First Robotics, we've become a First Robotics kickoff site. We build a half field. We do a lot to try to support our local high school robotics groups. At Delgado Community College, we work with any department that's interested in having students learn to use the lab, which at the moment is the automotive department, the culinary department, theater, CAD, and architecture. And we are open from 4 p.m. till 8:30 p.m. most weekdays, 4 weekdays, to the community. And we offer 2 free weekly classes where you learn to use our equipment. And then we have open hours where community members can come use the equipment and we help them with any projects that they want to complete. So for K-12 classes, for our one-day events, we have a couple of different projects that we do where we use these are all laser cutter projects. I really like laser cutter projects because it's so immediately gratifying. And we've got a lot of, you can see we have a shortcut wall up on our wall because computer literacy is such a big issue with some of these students. So teaching them shortcuts is almost as important as anything else we're doing, getting them more comfortable with computer use and then knowing that they can do this. Here's some of our bigger projects. We did an Eiffel Tower for the French Quarter Fest last year. We did Rube Goldberg machines over the summer. Here's some first robotics and summer interns. And right now we are producing face shields for New Orleans East Hospital in New Orleans. And we're working with the local community of makers to try to figure out designs and get them to hospitals that need them. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Ellie. Oh, all right, and we're getting some questions in. Thanks, guys. Next, we are going to hear from Andrea Fields. You ready, Andrea?
Hello. Let me hopefully get this to work the first time. Okay. Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Fields. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. It's pretty sparse here in as far as people going out, so this is a good change of pace for me today. Everyone probably has seen this picture one or twice in a Fab Foundation's presentation. This is myself in high school. I was a founding member for MC² STEM High School in Cleveland, Ohio. And surprisingly, this picture has cycled through a bunch of people. So my background's a little bit different. I started as a high school student in the Fab Lab world, but was in the first group of people to actually have one. So it was a little bit different trying to navigate the do's and don'ts or what we should do and shouldn't do. So after a lot of mistakes, we kind of figured it out a little bit. And after graduating high school in 2012, I took over our management for our labs. And I also went out and did some facilitations with teachers, administrators, whoever else was kind of interested in Fab at the time. And then it kind of stuck with me through college as well. So I got my bachelor's and master's last year. Actually, I finished my master's in civil engineering from Cleveland State. And I also was managing their Fab Lab for a little bit as well. And I actually ended up cycling all the way back down to a preschool now. So I've taught at the collegiate level with Fab Lab, high school teachers, administrators, but now I'm actually getting down to the root of it with little ones from age 3 to 5. And it's a little bit different. The challenges that I'm having, I didn't expect to have with the actual students as far as their imagination. I would think that they would be the most innovative and ready to go group of kids, but there is a complete difference between the preschoolers and the kindergartners. So the way the school is broke up in Euclid, Ohio, is that you have preschool and then kindergarten. Kindergarten starts with the 4 and 5-year-olds, and they're in one half of the building. And then you have your 3 and 4-year-olds that are preschoolers that are either transitioning to kindergarten or just transitioning into preschool themselves. So the 3 and 4-year-olds actually have the more, the natural ability to come up with projects that uses their imagination. They don't struggle as much as far as giving them open-ended projects. In kindergarten, it takes them a little bit longer because they're more structured. And I would think that that didn't happen until elementary school from my previous experience, but it's actually starting now in kindergarten. So I've had to take the kindergartner's mind back into play and then reinforce their actual classroom skills with their letters and learning to read. And we've done things from learning how to use hot glue guns to learning how to use foam cutters, using canary cutters. And it's quite interesting because they're 3 and 5-year-olds, so you wouldn't think to normally give them these tools. They are guided, so they're not by themselves, but they get to actually physically hold the tool with help from an instructor. So it's usually myself and their teacher. Preschool has an extra teacher, a teacher assistant with their classes, but kindergartners don't. So that's the larger classes. And it's quite interesting because you would think the kindergartners, again, have a little more maturity, but they don't. So again, is we have to break down the thought that they can't do things, and they get so frustrated, then they quit after the first time because they're so used to only getting, let's say, 5 minutes, and they have to get it done the first time in that activity. And when they come to the lab, they have an hour of basically, I can keep messing up until I get the project finished. And if I don't, then I can come back later at another time and do it. So with that, the little kids have learn things from basic tools with a screwdriver and learning how to use that with foam and screws, to using little power drills for the little hands with foam as well, and then advancing up to hammers and nails and wood, sanding, all your basics, as well as then going up into the laser cutter and using the iPad to design, really just moving things to the print screen, and then being able to have something personalized with their name on it. Where before COVID happened, we had planned this really big spring project with launching gardens. So they were going to each build individual gardens and track the progress over the next couple months until Earth Day, where they were revealed to the parents and the community what they've been doing with their journals and their plants. But that has been paused. So we before the break, we also had parent nights. So it's kind of like a mom and me or a dad and me event where the student gets to bring their parents in for 2 Fridays a month, where they can work on a project. And the parents or the students don't know what the project is until they get there. And we've done things from building clocks to building candle holders to designing t-shirts, where the student would design the shirt and then work with their parent to make it on both the adult shirt and the kid shirt. So they would have matching shirts at the end of the workshop. And so far that's been pretty good. I was only supposed to work until the end of this school year for them. But with the transition of the COVID, we've been doing a lot of at home, just trying to get the documentation up so that they can be set for the next year when the new instructor comes in to teach the fab. So fingers crossed the transition goes well with that. But that's kind of what I've been up to lately.
Great. Thank you so much, Andrea. Those are some great pictures.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Nina. Nina, you ready?
Oh, yeah. There's so many great photos that everybody's sharing. It's so cute. Let me also thank you so much for including me in this today. It's really great to be a part of this and to meet folks and to see folks. We are all not allowed to have human interactions right now that are not digital. So it's great to have more digital ones. And I can talk about how we're going to figure, we just released what we're going to do yesterday for the rest of the school year, because in Pennsylvania, there's no more school, or quote unquote, as the governor said, schools are closed indefinitely. Okay, so Assemble is a place that I started 9 years ago now, and I'm going to talk about that, but I also want to talk about how I got there. So my own background is architecture. The one photo is from middle school. Not much, some things have changed. I no longer practice the use of bangs, but I cut those bangs myself, so one could say I was an early maker, but I made some bad choices too in my making. I my background's architecture. I went to school for architecture, and that was like really like the awesomest thing that I could study, because you were drawing and making and building, and that's where I got into coding and laser cutting and fabrication and 3D modeling and 3D printing. And then this magical thing happened, which we might be in again. It's called the recession. So cool inventive things might come out of this. But architecture did not fare well during that time, and I had to kind of reconfigure the world. At that point, I was out in Los Angeles. I just graduated from Southern California Institute of Architecture with my master's in architecture, focusing in media, and the world was not caring about architecture. So, but what was happening at the time was like, hey, there's this crazy world, these things were created, and how are we not able to use these? How is everyone not able to use these? Like, supposedly we all have access to the information, but it wasn't being practiced everywhere. So that really became the roots and the seeds that started Assemble. So I'm gonna fast forward a bit. I ended up moving back to Pittsburgh, getting a whole bunch of different folks together to try to start this really grassroots space that has now turned into a lot more. But to show you how I feel about what I do, I want to share this video. Just a little bit. So, and at Assemble, we do talk about STEAM, and I think this video really encapsulates everything that I am feeling and talking about with STEAM, because like you can see in the background, there's so much science, technology entering art and math. There's tessellation, there's rhythm, there's visualization of sound, and she's asking you to make per day, and it just, like, my heart's pumping, and I'm like, it's a full body thing. Making is like, regardless if you're like, I'm stuck at this computer, you're still like fully engaged. But yeah, this is how I feel. Okay, so getting into Assemble. Assemble envisions diverse neighborhoods of empowered people who create, connect, learn, and transform together. We are ultimately what we're hoping for is that not just people doing that with us, but they're doing it beyond us, because we know we're not the end all be all, and we need people to figure things out beyond us. But our big mission is to bring people together, because people are so disconnected, as we are so disconnected right now, and helping people from different communities to find their overlaps, such as like, some people identify as artists, right, within the maker world, or technologists, or straight up makers, but at the end of the day, we all need to be learners, because there will always be something new to learn and engage with. I also like to talk about it as bringing people in who can share their experiences, because they are experts in their own lived experiences, and this goes across many different topics, from like your 13-year-old who's an expert in Minecraft and Roblox. I always say Roblox wrong, so I just want to put that out there. To like our grandmas down the street who are going to teach us how to really do some awesome crochet and like sewing, and then take that sewing to the next level. So giving opportunities for people to share who they are, because that's a place for sharing identities, as through what they know. Right? And then real quick, our STEAM, and I know that sometimes it's like, oh, STEM, STEAM, blah, blah, blah. We all know the difference, it's funding. So STEAM, how we talk about this is through the verbs, because assemble's a verb, and assemble means to come together and to put together. And when we're talking about science, we're talking about observations, and using our observations, because we look at the world around us when we're studying science. Math is how we start to prove it, right? By putting metrics and measurements to things. Engineering is how we change all of it. So we use what we've seen, what we know to be, what we've seen, our observations, what we know to be true, and we shake it up through engineering. And then technology, is really like through the creation of the stuff. These are both forms of technology. One has the ability to hold a circuit, one doesn't yet. It might be a smart pen in the future, who knows? But that's the big difference to make it programmable. And then art is how we communicate. If you are unable to communicate your observations, they die with you, right? Like and making sure like what you're trying to change is also part of your communication. And that is why we are so adamant about continuing to practice art. I'm just gonna throw this out there too. I used this very specific font. At one point in time, we all know that there was a magazine that is now just a digital space, but there was a magazine that had a bunch of covers that Leah Buckley called out twice at FabLearn, and how there was maybe 18% of women on these covers and no people of color, like more inanimate objects, more robots than people, like just shows you some values there. So that's not what our world looks like. I don't know how everybody else's world looks like, but I doubt that is true. So, you know, making sure to help our kids who, you know, in our neighborhood to see themselves, but also to see the lineage of makers out there that are part of the untold stories that, and helping people to see that it's not a separate thing. Like this is history, and making is one and the same. I just wanted to throw this one out there too, because in the process of all this, I've been making a makerspace -gallery -nonprofit. And, you know, we're not at the end. One could say, you know, like which one is assembled? Oh my goodness. And we're about here. Well, this one. So like, oh my God.
It's 9:30 a.m.
Technology is happening all around us, everyone. I'm sorry. And I'm almost done. But yeah, so like we're still in this like awkward teenage phase. So ultimately we're also trying to work on a playbook, and this is the cross-section of our DNA where it comes to learning content, right? Where you get into what is the fab and the making, but always bringing in an aspect of community, social justice, or cultural and contextual relevancy. So maybe one day we'll be on Mars. Just some quick photos. We talk about big issues with our kids and help them to process it through their making. And we do many different things. And I think, I can't remember if we just got a new laser cutter. We got the Glow Forge, which has been great. But ultimately, it's like helping the kids to learn and do, and to also make a change, and to put those things into their neighborhood, such as this little free library that they built. And that they did laser cut these little signs for fruits and vegetables. Two quick quotes to throw out there for everybody that I like to share with all of my talks and presentations. You might have heard this one before. Once you learn to read, you will be forever free, right? By Frederick Douglass. And reading is just one thing, right? Like I'm still 100% on with what Frederick Douglass said, but I want to push it forward and think like, it's not just that absorption of information, but that continual dialogue of information, right? Through your making and your creation, will you be forever free? But are we just making things to make stuff? And I know that I'm sure others have had this conversation before. Massimo Vignelli, if you've ever been to New York, hopefully not right now, but the subway was the subway map, and the logos, like the B with the circle, that was all his design. And so I challenge folk to not make just to make, but it's like the making and the point of becoming, right? Like it's part of that process. And so it's really like thinking again of the verbs and helping one to say like, I am a scientist, I am a technologist, I am an engineer, I am an artist, I am a mathematician, or any combination of jobs or things that don't exist yet today. So if you are in Pittsburgh, I welcome you to come and visit me. And even though Assemble is open to kids of all genders, we do have girl or femme-identified, girl-identified programs that are open to non-binary trans students as well. And we've had gender-neutral bathrooms from the beginning, because you also have gender-neutral bathrooms in your house. So it's been pretty easy to keep that. But it's a place to have a conversation, to be like, what's your pronouns? And this is my contact, and I welcome questions. And I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Nina. Really appreciate it. And our last panelist will be Ilaria. Ilaria, you ready?
I'm ready.
Great.
Okay, so I will share the presentation, and of course, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to me to be here sharing knowledge and making experience with all of you, and thanks to FA Foundation and SCOPES. So I will also share you a bit my timeline. So I'm also an architect, an Italian architect from Rome. And then I lived abroad, different country, in New York as an architect. But then I did my master in architecture, advanced architecture at the IAC in Barcelona. And from then, so exactly 10 years ago, I start my approach with digital fabrication and with Fab Lab. So I start in the Fab Lab of Barcelona, so 10 years ago. And then I moved to Buenos Aires, to Latin America, and I start to teach at the university. I touched architecture and digital fabrication and design for bigger age. So it was fun until I founded Fab Lab Argentina with the other two architects in Buenos Aires. And I also start in one point teaching parametric architecture and digital fabrication. It looked like that was not enough. So I start to also teach to the kids. And it was a great experience to understand how they can absorb technologies and how they can be creative and they can understand better than younger students or older students. So in that age, we started with FabLab Kids, that I'm one of the co-founders. The other two co-founders are from Mexico and Brazil, Alejandra and Alex. And we co-found FabLab Kids. And since 2 years, we work together and we never met each other. So we were working just online. But the community that we create was amazing. So this is the powerful of be online. So now that we are in this age, in this time to be online, many people told me, but for you and for all your colleagues, it's normal. Yes, it's one point, it's normal. And to make the distance very small. Then I had the experience also in biotechnology that as an architect, it changed me a lot. I did the bioacademy in Boston and in Lima. And then I start with my program. I come back in Rome and I start to work in another Fab Lab with school. So this Fab Lab is focused in connecting all the school of Italy. So students were coming at the Fab Lab or the Fab Lab was going in the classroom, and was also a great experience. And now I'm talking from Qatar, where I'm working also for a Fab Lab, a new Fab Lab called Studio 56, that it's support, and it's a project of the Ministry of Transport and Communication of Qatar in the sector of digital society. So I will show you a little bit all this line, this experience and picture of students that I saw through these years. So for example, one of the first projects of FabLab Kids was this chair that it's actually is not an object, but it's an educational product that teach emotions, that shares emotions, and press fit knowledge of joints, CNC or laser cut chair. So how you can see in the picture, this project is an open source project, it's a Creative Commons project. So the powerful of this project was to share to all the network of Fab Lab. And in very few months, we could see the transformation of this chair according of the machine of the Fab Lab, according of the material that we're using, according of the culture, and then also the DNA of the chair start to change according the culture, according of the events. For example, they transformed in a slider chair for an event that was about snow, and then culture as the Japanese, they transform as a meditation chair. So this is the powerful of sharing and putting like an idea to be collaborative and creative with all the network. So and that was really powerful. And then with Fab Lab Kids also, we did last year the Global Kids Day, that the idea was to do also this year. Let's see what will happen. But the idea of these events, it's sharing a cultural fusion. Last year was Japan. So the Japanese Day of Kids is in 4th of May. And they celebrate making this koinobori, this fish that means also love. And we transform a cultural object in a digital fabrication object all over the world. So more than 300 kids realized that what's this culture. So as you can see here from the picture, we were always working online. So we set up one day the same time, of course, with a difference of time of different places, and then we share, and kids start to also enjoy and see what other kids in the other part of the world that speak a different language, that outside is another timing, and but they are doing the same product. In this case was a symbol of Japan, and they are sharing and enjoying this knowledge. So at the end, like of one day, this Global Kids Day, we had thousands of this koinobori fish going around in a different way, and in different way to making, like also with a palm tree of, banana trees leaf, or whatever it was possible to do. So what we do usually is we share in the methodology, and then usually the Fab Lab, according of the community and according of the material that they can afford, they arrange. And this is amazing to see different kind of results coming out from one idea. Then in 2018, in the Fab Lab in Rome, called Fondazione Mondo Digitale, I was also sharing this nice experience of a hackathon. So in this hackathon, we did several hackathons. Usually were like 6 schools, 500 students, 20 teachers, 20 mentors, 2 days, and at the end 5 IoT, Internet of Things prototypes that were functioning. So usually there is like a big brand, like we collaborate with Cisco and with Wurt. They come up with a problem, and the students together, they make solutions. And it's very nice to see like how in the Fab Lab and how in the software space, students from different schools and different part of Italy are interacting together and are exchanging knowledge, and are really creating something that they make. If there is a big company that it's there, and it say to them what's the problem of them company, they feel very proud, and they spend time just to find a solution and to speak to a big manager of a big business company. So this is also very powerful and very interesting in the way of creating. And then I will switch now where I am. I'm the education specialist in this moment of these projects called Studio 5-6, that it's also focused in students from 7 to 18 years old. And basically it's in Qatar. So, and it's the content is to solve problems. So our content are based on local project and also international project. Of course, we follow the philosophy and the content of Fab Foundation, SDG, Scopes, and Singularity University, and then other local contents. So the idea is always to provide to the students, to the Qatari makers, the right tools in order to them they can come up with a solution. So brainstorm, find the problem, and find a smart solution. So in the past year, what we achieved with different workshop and different activities, and we used the statements of Fab I Can, so to analyze the level. And so analyzing the level we use as a tool of measures, we couldn't make the balance on some skills that probably to make all the skills in equal level. And we reached like 3,300 kids that enjoy with us. So at the end also you see always at the end of one history of one Fab Lab, you have always the nice picture of students. Here it's interesting to see female and male mixed together because they are not used to. So in a Fab Lab, they are together and collaborate, and in different age, and of course, from different country. So our approach and our idea, and also the idea of this webinar, is to share our knowledge and give the right tools to the kids, and also to share as educators, to share to other educators what kids are doing in the world. So giving the right tools in order they can really create what's to be free to create without no limits, because now we can. And that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Ilaria. That is great. What great panelists we have. I appreciate everyone's input. I've been keeping track of some questions, and let's just jump in. So how about, there was a question about, which I really liked. Does being a woman require a different sensibility for making and fabbing? Do any of our panelists feel engaged or feel motivated to answer that question, or have something to say? Nina, you look like you want to say something.
I can throw something out there. Even though you try to embody like non-gendered perspectives, it's really hard because regardless of what you are trying to put out there, other people have been programmed to feel and think a certain way, and even for themselves or their children, and or like, how do I engage with this space? Like, I don't, like being like one thing or another. Something that has been really interesting for us, because we're not the only maker space in Pittsburgh. We're not the only space doing this, but we've always tended to attract more, especially for our staff, more women, and we've had more people who are, let's say, like across like gender identity or different, like those, all the different identities. It's been extremely intersectional, and I think coming with, when someone sees me, sometimes it's a little bit more approachable than, again, like these are like biases one might have versus like towards a male run space. But one might say like, oh, I can go talk to that person, which there tends to be a lot of talking. And I feel in more like women run spaces, or like there's space for the emotional energy, right? There's a respect for the struggle. There's a respect for, I'm having a hard day, I got to get back to it. But then you have us, you can celebrate the wins later. Like there's other problems that come out, it seems, too, to at least to my attention, through everyone's making as well.
Great. Thank you. That's very, very thoughtful. Ilaria, can you speak a little about the culture in Qatar, and how you mentioned in a passing that the Fab Lab is one of the unique spaces where boys and girls get to work together. How has that affected the way you approach projects? Because you've come from a lot of different cultures, and being in this space, how does that affect the way you approach your lessons?
Yes, exactly. Usually, I mean, here in Qatar, since when they are from the kindergarten, they are separate, female and male, most of them. Then, like Qatar, as the 80% of the population is expat, so there are a lot of kindergarten and school that are international, and the international are mixed. But as a Fab Lab, that it's open for all the community, it's open for everyone. And something that I forgot, it's also free, because it's a project from the government, so everything is free. And we face like not the issue, but we are always thinking about, for example, when we are going into the school. So if we go to a female school, we divide the education technologies just female or male. This is when we go to the school, but usually when the students come to the Fab Lab, they, like human kids, they start to, of course, assemble it in female and male, they separate. During when at beginning they come and the workshop start and they sit, but then just during the workshop they are just starting to ask for the tools. So there is like this communication and the helping, and then showing, okay, my robot, it's working, how it works. So there is this kind of communication and collaboration together. And actually it's very nice to see, because they are not just because of female or male, but also different from different countries all around. So it's very interesting, and I think it's very interesting from them too, to relate, to just to know each other's.
Great, thank you. That's a very unique space you have there. I have a question for Ellie. Somebody asked about how do you structure your free workshops? Are they pre-registered, or how do you kind of structure them so that you know who's coming and what to do?
Sure. We use Eventbrite. So we list the classes. They're 2 hours every Monday and Wednesday night. We rotate through basic classes for learning to use all of our equipment. And you can sign up for them 1 week in advance, and it's free. So there's no membership fees. We use our grants to fund all of our programming.
Great. And can somebody speak to volunteers in the lab? How do you use your volunteers? Is there a job description, some volunteer training tips? Anything? Can any of the panelists answer that? Does nobody have volunteers?
We have a lot of interns that we have, and we'll have some folks volunteer, but we tend to rely more on our staff. And then if we have a volunteer who has a specific type of expertise, we'll bring them in as a guest expert. Just so we found that volunteers tend to have less reliable time available to volunteer on a weekly basis, and we don't want to disrupt the relationships, because the relationships are the basis of like our ability to bring in new folks or new concepts or new information. So providing one constant and then having new things all the time. And sometimes volunteers tend to not be able to be there for the whole semester, for example.
in the previous lab that I was in, it was a middle school. And the way we did volunteers were, because it's a school, you have to, if the workshop was during school hours and they couldn't come, because they had to then have a background check. But once it was after hours, they just had to fill out a consent form saying that they wouldn't harm anyone or harm the equipment. And then they would sign up for certain workshops that they would definitely come to. So we knew when we would have the workshops, but we didn't know what we would do at the workshops. But regardless of that, they were able to sign up and commit to saying, okay, I'll come to these 3 workshops, or I will only be able to come for like 1 open hour. For the school that I'm at now, the preschool kindergarten school, the way we do volunteers is similar, except we don't have any signups or consent forms. Because it's after hours, they can just commit to the day that they're going to come. So we know that we're going to do 2 workshops a month. Could you come these 2 months, or whenever it's convenient for them? And usually the parent comes that doesn't have the kid at the school. They can come and help, or the staff that is in the building will bring their kids that are older in the high school and come help and volunteer.
Great, thank you. We had a question about staff trainings for specific strategies in making with women or students from different cultures. And I wanted to point out that I did post in the chat our SCOPES previous webinar, which was all about culturally relevant digital fabrication. So check that out when you guys get a chance. But in the meantime, can any of our panelists speak to working specifically, strategies working specifically with women or students with cultural differences?
I've noticed that if you get an electric drill into a girl's hand, all of a sudden you get that switch and they're like, oh, I can do this. That's sort of a big moment. The big difference I found between girls and boys coming into the lab or coming into robotics is just the confidence that they have going in. And once you sort of get them to if you can just, like, nobody knows what they're doing when they start. If you can just stress, like, it's fine, it's okay, you don't need to be good yet. You just need to be willing to try. And if you can work hard, and if you can really instill that, all of a sudden you get really amazing results.
Great. Now we're running out of time. I wanted to address one more question from the community. And if we could all quickly address this within our next 4 minutes, so you guys have less than a minute. What would you say are the major difficulties or challenges in working in your makerspace? Nina, can you start?
Getting folks to work together, I think, to go back to that question about people with different identities, having adults with different identities to work together, because they are ultimately modeling behaviors for the students. And if we're asking them to come together and overcome differences and to, you know, ultimately find their similarities or to celebrate their uniqueness and differences, having the grown-ups do that too is really difficult.
Great, thanks. Ilaria, what can you say about that, the most challenges you have?
I mean, we have different challenge as an organization of different culture, but actually, like for us, it's the most difficult things is to organize the timing of having all together at the same time after school, because many times students and actually get the continuities. They can come once or twice, but if they have to follow like a tier program in the Fab Lab, it's very difficult to make it come every time all the group together at the same times, or because they have extra activity at school, if they have the exam. So if we are talking about like a semester plan of 1 month, once a week in the afternoon or twice a week, it's a bit difficult. So, I mean, my solution is more to integrate our program with the curriculum of the school, because we start to do that and actually kids enjoy more. Also to be in another space or to have other educators beside the one that they have, they get more attractive and they get more interest to it. So
Great. Thank you, Ilaria. Ellie, can you share about your challenges?
Yeah, our biggest challenge is hours in the day. So keeping the machinery maintained, fixing anything that breaks, helping people with their projects, and designing courses and running classes for kids doesn't leave very much time for. And
Oh, we're having trouble with your feed, Ellie.
always a challenge.
That's
Chance to develop new material.
oh, there we go. You came back. All right, let's have. We lost you there for a minute. Can you review what the tasks are that you have day to day that are challenging your time? Nope, she's frozen again. Different times. Let's go to Andrea. Andrea, how can you? What are your biggest challenges in your lab?
In the space that I'm in, actually in all the education spaces that I worked, the common problem that I've had is getting teachers to come to the lab. Not in the sense of them having to run the lab themselves or the project themselves, but even having the willingness to bring their students down. The workaround is always go to the students first, and they can kind of persuade the teacher to bring the class down. But in the younger classes, the teacher can seem to just say, oh, they can't do this, and they already put the stereotype on the students versus just giving them the chance to just try and just come a couple of times, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It usually doesn't. It usually always works, but getting that first, bring your class down, and then once they bring them down, for example, even with the screwdriver lesson, they're like, I didn't even think that you try to get them to use their motor skills and do a screwdriver. I'm just like, just tell your other friends, teachers, to bring your class down. But once they are in the lab, it's easier to get them to come back. But it's just that initial pull of, you can do it. just try. So that's the main thing that I struggle with.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your struggles. I think we got to the meat of them. And every makerspace obviously has its own struggle. And I appreciate the audience chipping in and asking questions. This has been a great way to spend our morning. I've really appreciated the thoughtful inputs from all these amazing women that we have, and just to kind of get our minds around life as usual is kind of nice in this day and time. But speaking of this day and time, we are having a call for lessons on the SCOPES site. Most of our lessons are in digital fabrication, but in this challenging time when we are at home and people are missing their beloved 3D printers and their laser cutters are in quarantine, we are asking for the community to pull together some things that we can do at home away from those machines. So check out our website and put in a lesson or two to give us something to do at home. We'd really appreciate the community to chip in, get together, and figure out how to best spend our time away from our digital fabrication tools. A special thanks to all of our panelists today. I'm going to send out a follow-up email to everyone with a link to our post-webinar, and I will have in their email addresses of our panelists if you're interested in getting in touch with them. Maybe there were some questions that we didn't get time to answer today, or if you want to hear more about their work and how we are navigating the new normal, that will be in the follow-up email that I send after the webinar. So I appreciate everybody coming to the webinar today, and have a great day, stay strong, and stay inside. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.